This evening, it's a topic of kind of looking back to the earlier time. I think it's important for us to recognize how fortunate we are to live in a place where we can have a peaceful transition in government. There are many places around the world where that is not the case. We haven't had anything especially scandalous going on here. There haven't, in association with these elections, haven't been any sexting of tasteless photos. There have been no drug scandals, as far as I've heard, no fiscal impropriety, no assertions of infidelity or even offensive language, just a difference of political ideology. We have differing political positions, but we don't necessarily have to equate those with personal disdain. I think we learn lessons during campaign seasons and are reminded of the civility of our community and elected government here in Moscow. We had a relatively pathetic percentage of voters go to the polls relative to other countries. Moscow had 34%, which actually is doing pretty well compared to Moscow, Russia, where they had just under 20% in their most recent elections. But Western Europe averages 77% voter turnout, with some countries above 90%, even where voting is not mandatory. So that's a challenge to all of you in subsequent elections. Become informed voters and go to the polls. The history of the Pledge of Allegiance, I want to compliment Sue Scott for being a pacer with me on that. In February 2006, we had a council that was not inclined to routinely recite the Pledge of Allegiance. It was very controversial at the time. The conversations went something like, "We're Americans, we cannot be made to state an oath such as that." You'll hear our elected officials tonight with the oath of office, recognizing that they support the Constitution and the laws of the land. And I think that is sufficient in the United States of America. I think you will find there is a strong amount of patriotism in this council, in the incoming council, just as there was in 2006 with that council that took a fair amount of heat for the idea that simply reciting words without internalizing their meaning was not substantive and not so meaningful. And so Sue Scott has been a pacer so that we are respectful of that oath, that Pledge of Allegiance, and the meaning of it. And I want to thank her for representing that with dignity as we can hear our voices side by side here in this back row. Within the context of political transition and the perceptions of patriotism, the equal representation for all under our form of government, I'm offering this video tonight, which I hope will be self-explanatory. In 2006, like now, there was hope that the status quo would be improved, at least selectively, with a change of political direction. Stay tuned. Please take a look, direct your attention to the screen. I'll call the January 16th, 2007 Moscow City Council special meeting to order. As most of you know, our friend and colleague John Dickinson disappeared a week ago Sunday, and we have no updated news. The family, friends, and searchers with the Oregon authorities have found no evidence of John. We miss him terribly, and we cherish the many ways he touched so many lives. And this evening, for the Renewing Our Focus segment, I'd like to recall John Dickinson's being the first of our council members to introduce Renewing Our Focus. The context of that meeting was January 30th, 2006. It was an unsettled time in our city. We'd had a new election just fresh on the heels of 4 new city council members and a new mayor being elected. We'd had a number of controversial issues that had already come before us. And true to form, it was John who chose the perfect touch for that very necessary meeting. I direct your attention to our screen, and we'll watch a DVD of John renewing our focus. The meeting of the Moscow City Council to order. The first item on our agenda this evening is something called Renewing Our Focus. And in lieu of routinely saying the Pledge of Allegiance at every meeting, lacking unanimity among our council members, we have implemented a practice called Renewing Our Focus. I'll remind citizens that our elected officials have signed an oath of office in which we promise to uphold the U.S. Constitution, the Constitution of the State of Idaho, and the laws and ordinances of the City of Moscow. So you will undoubtedly hear the Pledge of Allegiance continue to be said at some of our meetings, but at other times, council members will bring forward other examples of patriotism, humanitarianism, community spirit, and inspirational messages. And this week, it's John Dickinson's turn for that presentation.
I was quite pleased when Nancy asked me to start this, and I guess I wanted to say a couple of words before I do my thing, and that is that I'm not sure how many people know that I ran for this office originally because of the way that a graduate student of mine was being treated by our government, Sami Omar al-Hussein, who ended up staying in jail for 511 days in solitary confinement until he was found innocent of all charges and was allowed to go home. I think I'd follow that by just saying that the person who wrote the Pledge of Allegiance was a Baptist minister, socialist in Florida, I think it was, and he'd hoped to be able to say, instead of with justice and with liberty and justice for all, he'd hoped to be able to say what the French say, and that is equality, liberty, and justice. But that equality was, in 1893, when he was writing this, was not possible for either women or minorities. It turns out in about that same time period, 1893, a woman was driving across this country, I suppose not driving, moving or traveling across this country, and was struck by the beauty of our country. And she wrote, in 1893, a song called America the Beautiful. And so what I thought I'd do tonight for my thing is I've never actually sung in public, but to stand up and ask you to join me in one round of America the Beautiful. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesties above thy fruited plains. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Thanks.
So I think that was pretty amazing. John Dickinson went on to establish Serious Idaho Theater and do lots of wonderful things for the arts, and I think he lost his stage fright here in this room that night singing in front of an audience like this one. In that we have chosen to routinely reintroduce the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us in standing and recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.